Shalom, shalom, shalom to everyone watching. Rabbi Moshe Otero, I want to welcome you this morning to our series, Sefer Ikkarim, as we get into chapter 10, which Rabbi Joseph Alba will begin to develop the idea that providence is also proven by the intellect, by the mere intellect, something that for most of you probably say it's impossible. Well, we'll take a look at his argument in this video regarding the intellect as a use of demonstrating that providence, divine providence, exists. So let's go right into this morning's lecture. And the first, as we will see in chapter 10, the arguments derived from the intellects are two kinds, he says. The one is derived from consideration of the recipient, and the other from a consideration of the giver. So we get the giver and the receiver. The first is as follows. The intellectual power in man cannot have been intended merely for preservation of the species, for we see that the other species are preserved without it, and since therefore we see that man has a superiority to the lower animals, it is unlikely that he would abandon it to himself and no notice to be taken of his particular affairs, as in the case of the lower animals, since he is a superior to them in knowledge. To this argument, God alludes in his first answer to Job, where he first enumerates the benefits he bestows upon various animal species, and providing for each one specifically, or especially as distinct from the other species, by preserving it or by giving it a peculiar perfection different than that of other species. Who provideth for the raven his prey, we read. Who has sent out the wild ass free? Knowest thou time when the wild goat of the rock brings forth? Or canst thou mark when the hinds do calves? Hast thou given the horse his strength? Then he describes the benefit he bestows upon man in implanting in his nature a peculiar perfection, namely the power to apprehend the intelligible concepts, who hath given understanding to the mind. The word here is sekvi, and it denotes the intellectual power in man. As I explained in my first book, first he says, who hath implanted the basis of his created nature. These first intelligibility are real causes which demonstrates possible, prevent an infinite regress. The bet, first letter of the Hebrew word, batushot, is part of the root, as we explained in the first book. He says that this in order to explain that the gift that has been given to man was without doubt intended for a more noble purpose than it is realized in the lower animals. This superiority of man indicates that he is taken more notice of by God than any animal species. This being so, it follows that divine providence should attach to him in a greater degree in accordance with the superiority of his intellect to the lower animals. And Maimonides has the same idea, namely that the degree of divine providence one enjoys depends on the degree of intellectual power he possesses. It follows that if he were perfect in his intellect, as far as he lies in his powers, will enjoy a great degree of divine providence than the one who has not done so. So, on the other hand, he who does not perfect his soul at all and wastes his intellectual energies is reduced to the degree of the lower animals and loses the divine providence altogether. Idea of the dumbing of America. How people can become so dumb that they can believe one thing that's right in front of them and smacks them silly. You know, this whole 10 gender theories that's being proposed. It's only 2 genders. But that even smacks in the face of these people who basically have lost all sense of intellectual honesty. This is conclusive proof that the measure of the divine providence attaching to the rational individual depends upon the perfection of his reason, just as in the beginning when the animal species was created. Providence took more notice of man than that of other animal species in giving him this ability. David also uses the intellectual faculty in a man as proof that the divine providence takes care of the sublunar world. O Lord, our Lord, what glory is there in thy name in all the earth? The word ma, what, or how, is derogatory as in the expression, and what, ma, are we? What are we? Psalmist expresses his wonder and says, what worth and glory can there be for the name upon all earth, seeing that thou hast put thy majesty above the heavens, and which are as strong as the molten mirror, and permanent and bright without any doubt. I do not see among the creatures of earth there is any one through whose creation one may not have an idea of thy dignity and the glory of thy name. But when I consider the matter carefully, and I find that out of the principles which are innate in the man and are not derived from experience or habit, these are the prima intelligibilia. Intelligibilia, that's what he says, intelligibilia, which are in the mouth of babes of suckling and of the sensibilia, all of which are strong foundations of knowledge and proof and reality of providence. Because of thine adversaries, those who say the Lord hath forsaken the land, that thou mightest still the enemy and the avenger, who afflicts the poor and the needy, and follows his own desires, since he denies the providence, or denies providence. Then he explains at length the same topic which he has stated briefly. When I behold thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, what is man that thou art mindful of him? That is, when I behold the heavens in their noble beauty, and the structures of the moon and the stars which thou hast established, I say in my heart, what is man? For man is nothing in comparison with their nobility. He is not worthy of divine providence, since he is lowly creature, made of waste matter and putrid drop. Then again he contradicts this idea to say, and yet thou hast made him a little bit lower than the angels. That is, when I consider the creation of man, and see the perfection thereof, namely that he possesses an intellectual faculty by which he comes near to the angels, being only a little bit below them, they being active intelligence, while he is potential intelligence, that thou made them a little bit lower than the angels, through the glory and honor and the beauty of divine crown, with which thou didst crown them, and by means of this power thou hast made him known to the dominions of the works of thy hands, for without it he could not have subdued, and would have not been worthy of subduing all of the animals, which are stronger and more mightier than he, and putting them all under his feet. Nor could he have made a way in the sea or in the path of the mighty waters, of which shows that the divine power mingles with him through his intellect, and he has some knowledge of his maker. This being so, and I say that from the creation of the earth there is proof may be derived of the glory of thy name and thy work and thy worth, since thou didst bestow rational faculty upon so coarse a matter. Therein can be seen the noble perfection for the worth of the artisan. Can be seen when he bestows perfection upon the inferior material, which is far from perfection. And as I have explained in the first chapter of the second book, says Rabbi Abbo, hence he concludes, O Lord, our Lord, how glorious is thy name in all the earth. The word ma, how, or what, is this passage intended to magnify the attribute as in the expression, how manifold are thy works, O Lord. Word how is ma. How great, how ma, what? How great are thy works, O Lord. The meaning is this, that although the heavens are made of much a nobler material than the sublunar creatures, nevertheless from the rationality or the rational faculty of man, who is but little lower than angels, we can infer that the name is glorious in all the earth, and that thy providence takes care of the human race in the sublunar world. Now, second point he brings out, says Rabbi Abbo, The second proof is taken from consideration of the giver. We just see the receiver. Now we're looking at the proof of the intellect as a giver. It has two forms. One is based upon God's wisdom and power, and the other upon consideration that man is the work of his hands. In other words, he is a creature of God. The first is based on upon God's wisdom and power and is as follows. It is an axiomatic preposition that all kinds of perfection should be ascribed to God, and all kinds of defects should be denied of him. Now it's a sign of perfection in man if he takes care of the world of his hands so that it may completely realize its purpose. It is also a sign of perfection in a master if he takes care of those who are governed by him, whom he guides with the righteous and justice. And if they fail to do so, it's a sign of a defect in man and a master and the master respectively. A human being may have such defect for lack of knowledge or power. A master who has the necessary ability may owe his defect to the fact that he is wicked, just unjust, or indifferent, but God is wise in heart, mighty in strength, as Job himself says. Hence he has absolute power. And there can be no failure of the providence on the account of weakness or inability to satisfy the needs of those governed by him, by God. And hence he is the wise, and can be no failure of the providence on the account of ignorance. Nor can there be a failure to take care of those under his guidance by reason of the wickedness or injustice. As Job argued when he said that God, being one without any one to oppose him, does wrong if he so desires to those dependent upon his rule. But he is at one with himself, and who can turn him? Also, there is no arbiter between us. Thus, that may lay his hand upon us both. For Elihu answered this argument when he said, "Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should commit iniquity." Far be it from God refers to his absolute power, for the word El, or God, denotes power. And since he has absolute power, he does no wrong or iniquity by failing to punish evildoers. Nor can he fail to take care of the work of his hand and reward the righteous, because he cannot supply their needs, for he is Shaddai, literally having enough. Almighty, who has enough in his being to bestow upon everything its final perfection, having enough therefore to supply everyone his need. If he did not do so, it would be an iniquity. Hence he says, "And after be it from the Almighty that he should commit iniquity." Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nehiyah bidvaro. Then he says, "For the work of man will he requite unto him," alluding to reward and cause every man to find according to his ways, an allusion to the punishment which comes upon the wicked. When he emphasizes his argument from the power and says, "Yea, of surety God will not do wickedly, neither will the Almighty pervert justice," like we see in the DOJ. This is to say that God has absolute power, as we have seen, and as the word El, God, signifies. Also, he can supply every existing thing with perfection which is capable, and as indicated in the word Almighty, Shaddai. But this cannot be unless he takes care of his particular acts of man and recompenses every one according to his work, and causes every man to find according to his ways. For he does not pay the wicked according to his wickedness. It would be wickedness in God, and God does not do wickedness. Also, if he does not reward the righteous according to his ways, it is a perversion of justice, and the Almighty does not pervert justice. And we must therefore say that God does take notice of human acts and requites every one according to his way. He then proves that God has absolute power. Who gave him a charge over the earth? Who is in charge of him? Who commanded him to make the earth? And who has more power than he? Or who has deposed the whole world? And who is more generous than he? If he sets his heart upon man, if he has gathered unto himself the spirit in his breath, all flesh would perish together. The meaning is that whoever is in charge, who is the one in charge, is the one who has the power than he, so that if he set his heart upon the world of nature, all flesh would perish together, and man would return to dust. Is the question. Would he return to dust? Of course. And there is no other being who can do all of this except him. Hence it is clear that he has absolute power, and since it is clear that he cannot do this, for it would be considered wickedness or iniquity, he would be hater of justice. And therefore he says, if now thou hast understanding, hear, hearken to the voice of my words. Shall even one that hateth right govern? And wilt thou condemn him who is just and mighty? Is it fit to say to a king, thou art base? Or to a noble, ye are wicked? That respects not the persons of the princes, or regards the rich of more than the poor, for they are all the work of his hands. The meaning is this. Since we have shown that he has the power and is a king, and is king of all, we cannot say that a lord who hates justice can govern. Nor can we condemn the one who is absolutely righteous. We cannot say to a king who has absolute power that he is base and does iniquity and chooses to be called a wrongdoer. Nor is it proper to call a person who can give as much as he pleases to the wicked, for he would not choose to be called wicked or iniquitous by upholding or withholding the good that is due to the deserving and failing to reward him according to his righteousness. Nor can we say that he does this because he is obliged to respect the great ones of the land. For God respects no person, as we read, that they respect not the person or prince's manner, since he has the power to do so, and there is no one who can prevent him from doing so. For in this moment they die. For in a moment they die, even at midnight, and the people are shaken and pass away through his then messengers, and the messengers take away the mighty and the strong without touching them with the hand. This proves that his eyes are upon the ways of man, and he sees all of their doings and goings. There is no darkness, no shadow of death, where the workers of iniquity may hide themselves. This is the style of the whole second reply, in which Elihu argues to prove that the existence of providence is on the basis of God's power. Now the second form of proof is based upon the fact that man is the work of God's hand. It is given to Elihu in his fourth speech as follows. The strongest argument which Job advanced against the idea of the providence is based upon man's inferiority, which is, what is man? That thou shouldst magnify him, and that thou shouldest set thy heart upon him, and that thou shouldest remember him every morning and every moment. So did God remember and always thinking, contemplating on his creation? Job thought that because man was despicable and contemptible in the sight of God, he does not pay attention to his various deeds any more than he takes notice of the acts of the pig, and for the same reason. And at the same time, Job held this to be unjust on the part of God, and improper from withholding man of that which is due, since man is the work of God's hand, and is endowed with a rational faculty. For this reason he calls man God's handiwork, because his origin is not due to nature alone, like the lower animals, but to the nature and divine power, the intellectual power with which man is endowed. As we are told, let us make man in our image. According to Job, he said that it refers to the injustice in God to deprive man of God's care and personal on the grounds of man's great inferiority to God. For it is not proper for a perfect being to despise the work of his hands, and to reject it because it's inferior. Hence he said, it is good unto thee that thou shouldest despise the work of thy hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked. The meaning is the following. Does thou think that it is right because thou art absolutely perfect, and man is lowly, despicable, in comparison with thy greatness, that thou shouldest deprive him of his due and prevent him from obtaining that perfection of which he is capable through the rational power which thou gavest him, and abandon him by reason of his worthlessness, thus despising the work of thy hands? By so acting thou art, as it were, confirming the words of the wicked, that says right doing is of no benefit, that doing right is of no benefit. According to Elihu, in his fourth reply, undertakes to answer the argument based upon man's inferiority. Behold, God is mighty, and despises not him who the mighty in strength of understanding. The meaning is, it's impossible that God ignores a human species because of their reason of their inferiority. And this is not the nature of the wise agent to abandon the work of his hand because of its inferiority, since that he cannot improve it. God is mighty. He is all-powerful and all-wise in actuality, being able to cause man to attain the measure of perfection which he is capable by reason of his great power, and hence it is not possible that he should despise man, who has a strong intellectual potentiality and is capable of intelligence. And since man has intellect potentiality, it stands to reason that God will help him to bring it to actuality, and would not rob mankind of the perfection which it is capable of obtaining, for this would be defecting God, since he has the power. As Job said at the end of the argument, thou shineth upon the counsel of the wicked. And Elihu says here that it is not so, but that the converse is true. His eyes, he preserves not the life of the wicked, but he giveth to the poor their right. He withdraws not his eyes from the righteous, but with kings upon the throne he sets them forever, and they are exalted. And if they are bound into a feather, beholden in cords of affliction, then he declareth unto them their works and their transgression, that they have behaved themselves proudly. And he opens also their ears to discipline, and commandeth them that they return from iniquity. And in this way he shows that all evil that comes to the righteous is due to the divine providence. Let me repeat that, because it's a beautiful statement of what Rabbi Albo just said. In this way he shows that all evil that comes to the righteous is due to divine providence. All evil. At the end of this reply, following the argument, he concludes by calling attention to the wonderful phenomenon of rain, which indicates wisdom and providence, the marvels of thunder, the evidence of power, wisdom and power being very strong argument, which God himself emphasizes in two replies. In one answer he proves his wisdom and providence from the wisdom that is evident in the formation of animals, and the providence which is similarly evident in the way in which various species of animals are provided with their appropriate protection and are endowed with a specific form of perfection. He denotes wisdom, which is the purpose of the reply to prove. Is the second reply, he proves power. Wilt thou even make void my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me, thou that mayest be justified? The meaning is, wilt thou deny my providence, and say that I do not deal justly with existing things, as if I were not able to do so? Or hast thou like an arm like God? Canst thou thunder thy voice like him? Deck thyself with majesty and excellency, and look upon every one that is proud and abase him? Look on every one that is proud and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place? Finally, Rabbi Abba concludes his whole argument in chapter 10. The whole answer proceeds in this style to the point, to point out the great power of God to create huge creatures which man is afraid to look at, and at the sight of which falls full length upon the ground. Hence he says, shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? All of this to show that since God has absolute power, it is impossible to attribute to him any inabilities in any respect, nor can we attribute to him lack of knowledge after seeing the extraordinary wisdom contained in all the things which he has created. As a result of this, Job was reconciled and admitted the two arguments. He acknowledged the argument of proving God's power when he said, I know that thou canst do everything, and the argument proving that God's knowledge in the expression, and that no purpose can be withholden from thee. And here Rabbi Abba concludes his argument where the intellect demonstrates, in fact, the idea and the concept of providence. Now, in the following chapter, we're going to be taking a look at how God provides in various ways to his species. And here we'll look at the providence of God in sustaining his created beings. So stay tuned. We will continue in our next series regarding this. Shalom, shalom, and may you be blessed in today. God bless.